Morning, glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Looking at the Johns Hopkins map at this hour on April the 14th, Tuesday. There are 119,818 fatalities from COVID across the world recorded out of almost 2 million cases. In the United States, which of course is our major concern if you're listening to this broadcast, there are 547,627 cases and 21,662 Americans have died. Last night's press briefing was not a moment where the press covered itself in glory. The president was responding at the beginning of the New York Times story, which he declared false. He began with this conversation about Anthony Fauci, who had begun the presser, cut number 8.
No one who has needed a ventilator has not gotten a ventilator. Think of that. You know, you heard all about ventilators. We need ventilators. Because they didn't have them, because the state should have had them. No one who has needed a ventilator has not gotten a ventilator. No one who has needed a hospital bed has been denied a hospital bed. That's not even really our responsibility. Now, if we can help, we're going to do it. But that's where the Army Corps of Engineers did such a great job. We built over 20,000 beds. In fact, we built thousands more than we've actually needed to be safe. We wanted to be safe, and they rose to this incredible occasion. I mean, we built more beds than we thought. We thought in Louisiana we were going heavy. And again, when I called the governor, I said, maybe we shouldn't build that second hospital because we don't want to build it if you don't need it. He called back. He said, I don't think we're going to need it. They had 1,000 rooms, 1,000 beds. And they used a lot of them, but they didn't need the other one, so we stopped it because we don't want to waste. But we're prepared to build thousands more should we need it. I don't think we're going to need it because it looks like we're plateauing and maybe even in many cases coming down.
It's great news if it's true. Then the president went on to talk about the downplaying, cut number 8.
I know what you want to say, but he's been really good. It's hard for me to say that. In fact, it's impossible for me to say. Gavin Newsom, the governor of California. I have many clips I have some clips from Anthony that I didn't want to put up, which were really good. I think Anthony would be the first one to say, when I closed the country to China, when I closed the China ban, whatever you want to call it, Anthony said I saved a lot of lives by doing that. I mean, am I correct? I don't want to put words in Anthony's mouth, by the way, and I like him. Today I walk in, I hear I'm going to fire him. I'm not firing him. I think he's a wonderful guy.
Tweet something that said fire.
He's not firing him. Then they get into, why did you retweet things? And the answer is because I did. Because it was interesting. I retweeted it. Retweets are not endorsements. How many times do you see that? Retweets are not endorsements. It's interesting to him. He retweets it. He doesn't have an explanation for it. But then he gets into it. Of CBS. I don't know Paula Reid. Never met her. Never had her on the show. Wouldn't recognize her in a crowd. Wouldn't be able to say to you whether or not she's a good or bad reporter. I just don't know. I found this exchange to be extraordinary. Cut number 9, President Trump with Paula Reid of CBS.
That time that you bought, the argument is that you bought yourself some time. You didn't use it to prepare hospitals. You didn't use it to ramp up testing. Right now,
you're so disgraceful. It's so disgraceful the way you say that. Let me just listen. I just went over it.
Or this rant supposed to make people
I just went over it
in an unprecedented crisis.
Nobody thought we should do it, and when I did it.
But what did you do with the time that you bought?
You know
the
we
month
did.
of February. That
we did.
Was a gap.
What do you do?
Month of February.
What do you do when you have no case in the whole United States?
You had cases
when
in February.
Excuse me, you reported it. 0 cases, 0 deaths on January 17th.
February, the entire
January.
month of
I said in
February.
January.
Your video has a complete gap.
On January 30th.
What did your administration do in February with the time that your travel ban bought
A
you?
lot.
What?
A lot. And in fact, we'll give you a list. What we did, in fact, part of it was up there. We did a lot. Look. You know you're a fake. You know that. Your whole network, the way you cover it, is fake. And most of you, and not all of you, but the people are wise to you. That's why you have a lower approval rating than you've ever had before, times probably 3. And when you ask me that question, let me ask you this: why did Biden apologize? Why did he write a letter of apology? No, that's very important. Why did the Democrats think that I acted too quickly? You know why? Because they really thought that I acted too quickly. We have done a great job. Now, I could have kept it open. And I could have done what some countries are doing. They're getting beat up pretty badly. I could have kept it open. I thought of keeping it open because nobody's ever heard of closing down a country, let alone the United States of America. But if I would have done that, we would have had hundreds of thousands of people that would right now be dead. We've done this right, and we really have done this right. The problem is the press doesn't cover it the way it should be. Go ahead. One more question, Steve.
Okay, then cut number 10. This is Dr. Fauci then engaging with Paula Reed, who was yesterday's pinata for the right wing and hero to the left. Cut number 10.
Out of the way. The other point I wanted to make is that I had an interview yesterday that I was asked a hypothetical question. And hypothetical questions sometimes can get you into some difficulty because it's what would have or could have. The nature of the hypothetical question was if, in fact, we had mitigated earlier, could lives have been saved? And the answer to my question was, as I always do, and I'm doing right now, perfectly honestly, say, yes. I mean, obviously, if mitigation helps, I've been up here many times telling you that mitigation works. So if mitigation works and you instigate it and you initiate it earlier, you will probably have saved more lives. If you initiated it later, you probably would have lost more lives. You initiated at a certain time. That was taken as a way that maybe somehow something was at fault here. So let me tell you from my experience, and I can only speak from my own experience, is that we had been talking before any meetings that we had about the pros and the cons, the effectiveness or not of strong mitigations. So discussions were going on mostly among the medical people about what that would mean. The first and only time that Dr. Birx and I went in and formally made a recommendation to the president to actually have a, quote, shutdown in the sense of not really shutdown, but to really have strong mitigation. We discussed it. Obviously, there would be concern by some that, in fact, that might have some negative consequences. Nonetheless, the president listened to the recommendation and went to the mitigation. The next second time that I went with Dr. Birx into the president and said, 15 days are not enough. We need to go 30 days. Obviously, there were people who had a problem with that because of the potential secondary effects. Nonetheless, at that time, the president went with the health recommendations, and we extended it another 30 days. So I can only tell you what I know and what my recommendations were. But clearly, as happens all the time, there were interpretations of that response to a hypothetical question that I just thought it would be very nice for me to clarify because I didn't have the chance to clarify. Thank you. Excuse me, the date. You know, to be honest with you, I don't even remember what the date was, but I can just tell you the first and only time that I went in and said we should do mitigation strongly, the response was, yes, we'll do it.
And what did you do? Is that the travel restrictions?
No, the travel restriction is separate. That was whether or not we wanted to go into a mitigation stage of 15 days of mitigation. The travel was another recommendation. When we went in and said we probably should be doing that, and the answer was yes. And then another time was we should do it with Europe, and the answer was yes. And the next time we should do it with the UK, and the answer was yes.
In this interview, you said there was pushback.
Yeah.
Where did that pushback come from?
No, it wasn't, and that was the wrong choice of words. You know what it was? When people discuss, not necessarily in front of the president, when people discuss, they say, well, you know, this is going to have maybe a harmful effect on this or on that. So it was a poor choice of words. There wasn't anybody saying, no, you shouldn't do that.
Are you doing this voluntarily, or did the president?
No, I'm doing it. Everything I do is voluntarily. Please, don't even imply that.
Can we replay cut number 11, please? Anthony Fauci to Paula Reed.
Are you doing this voluntarily, or did the president?
No, I'm doing it. Everything I do is voluntarily. Please, don't even imply that.
One more time, cut number 11.
Are you doing this voluntarily, or did the president?
No, I'm doing it. Everything I do is voluntarily. Please, don't even imply that.
You see, what Paula Reed is disappointed by is that Anthony Fauci won't say the president screwed up. Anthony Fauci just says that the president did everything I asked him to do when I asked him to do it. And so she assumes he's lying. So it's incredible. What an incredible exchange. What do you think? 1-800-520-1234 connects you to Hugh Hewitt in the ReliefFactor.com studio inside of the Beltway. I am Hugh Hewitt. Stay tuned. Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt, 1-800-520-1234. If you have an opinion on the exchange, this is just really the low point of D.C. media, questioning the credibility of Tony Fauci, asking him, are you a liar? That's what Paula Reed is asking him. I want to replay it so you can hear it. Anthony Fauci at yesterday's White House briefing. He's backed up. He said everything he asked the president to do, the president did. Cut number 11.
Are you doing this voluntarily, or did the president?
No, I'm doing it. Everything I do is voluntarily. Please, don't even imply that.
He's 79 years old. He served the public interest his entire career. He led the AIDS crusade. He's leading this response. And a CBS reporter asked him, are you doing this voluntarily? I just shudder. What has happened to the American media? This is not about America. It's about a virus that's killing hundreds of thousands of people worldwide, infecting millions, changing the world, and the White House press corps wants to make it Trump's fault. That's the bottom line. It's so astonishing. Let me do a market report brought to you by Birch Gold. You can send my name, Hugh, H-U-G-H, to 474747 via text. Just text Hugh to 474747, and Birch Gold will send you the information on how to buy gold and especially how to diversify your retirement holdings. Maybe you've seen a lot of them go way north. So maybe you had a bond fund or you owned Amazon. Amazon, my goodness, yesterday, Amazon went up something like $125 a share, and it is at this hour looking like it's going to reach what they call the cup breakout, according to technical. Amazon stock advanced 6.2% Monday after the company stopped accepting new online grocery customers due to strong demand. The company is also shortening hours at its Whole Foods stores to prioritize online grocery orders. It's hiring 75,000 more workers. It's approaching $2,186, which is a buy point in the cup base, according to Market Smith chart analysis. I have no idea what that means, but it means it's a really strong stock. What's it mean for gold? Gold this morning is at $1,764 an ounce. HughGold.com is where Birch Gold will figure out what is best for you. But you can text my name, Hugh, to 474747. Looks like it's going to be a good day on the markets in the United States. I do not know. All I know is that when you look abroad and you see that Japan increased 3% overnight, Hong Kong and Germany are up. England is down 0.5%. Not sure why that is, but the 10-year Treasury is inched up to 0.75%. And apparently, normalcy is returning to American markets. It can't get here soon enough. But at the end of this disintermediation of old buying, I finally got my Instacart to agree to deliver. Sometime in the next light year, they're going to come by with what I ordered from Instacart, which is good. That I chose Instacart because I thought everyone was overwhelming Amazon Prime and they're not taking new customers for Whole Foods. And then the fetching Mrs. Hewitt says, you dummy, we are. Amazon Prime and Whole Foods are the same. But nevertheless, I persevered with Instacart. It should arrive in 100 years or so. Rudy in South Carolina. Rudy, what do you make of Paula Reed, the White House press corps, Dr. Fauci, President Trump?
We watched the demonstration between she and Fauci, and we're just aghast at how unprofessional her behavior was. It demonstrated gross disregard of mutual respect. I'm surprised she's still a reporter for CBS, at that level at least. I really am surprised.
Are you doing this voluntarily? As though Anthony Fauci, who must have a 75% approval rating, bipartisan respect, but he won't give them the story they want, which is a story to criticize Trump, because that hasn't happened, because whatever he's recommended the president has done. He gave the fog of war analogy, which I'll expand on after the break. Trey in Texas. What do you think, Trey? You got 45 seconds, buddy.
Well, thank you, sir. I also agree. I understand we have freedom of the press, but we don't have freedom to propagandize the people. The disrespect for the President of the United States of America, the most powerful country on the face of the earth, and those people that are trying to help them get through this pandemic is amazing.
It is very disappointing, Very disappointed. Look, I'm a big free press advocate. They have every right to ask whatever they want. I always am glad that we live here where we can have that kind of spectacle as opposed to China where President General Secretary Xi never shows up. But some days are worse than others, and yesterday was a very bad day for the White House press corps. Stay tuned, America. It's the Hugh Hewitt Show. Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Yesterday in the Wall Street Journal, a story came out that quoted Derek Scissors of the American Enterprise Institute. I want you to understand this. AEI estimates that there are 2.9 million cases of COVID in the People's Republic of China. All right, 3 million cases. China is reporting that it has 82,000 cases, less than 1/10 of what experts believe. China is lying to you. The Communist Party of China is lying to you. If you repeat their numbers, you are a useful idiot for their propaganda. Do not believe their numbers. Do not believe they have it under control. They don't. We won't until there are effective therapies and effective interventions. Other world news. Looks like Israel will get a government after more brinksmanship between Benjamin Netanyahu and Benny Gantz. Yesterday they agreed, let's get together and figure this out, and they're going to go to midnight tomorrow night to do it. They'll probably arrive at a deal at 11:59 Wednesday night. So that's the good news. I want to go back. Joe Biden made a rare appearance yesterday. Have you asked yourself why Joe Biden isn't holding press conferences? President can hold press conferences every day. They can get the rapid testing up there. He's the presumptive nominee of the Democratic Party. He can sit down with 20 reporters, space them out on the lawn, do it inside somewhere, find an auditorium, do the same thing the president does, swab it down. He doesn't do that. Why isn't the former vice president doing that? Well, here he is on The View yesterday, finally getting the date right about an op-ed that he wrote. He says he wrote it for USA Today when, in fact, he wrote it for U.S. News and World Report. Cut number 1 of Joe Biden.
Look, all the way back in January, the intelligence community was saying that it's coming. We're going to have a real problem with this virus. And on January 27th, I wrote a piece for U.S. News and World Report saying we must be prepared. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't taken seriously.
It was actually for USA Today, excuse me. Then he talked about what the Democrats should be doing right now. Cut number 2.
And I want Donald Trump to look at these people in the eye and tell them, after they put their lives on the line for the rest of us, that they don't deserve a living wage, that they don't deserve health care, that they don't deserve to be able to send their kids to college or community college or trade school, that they don't deserve to make equal pay for equal work. I want them to look them in the eye and tell them that they don't deserve to be able to organize, to fight for what they deserve, to bargain with dignity, to demand their employers give them their due. I want them to look them in the eye and tell them that the scientists are wrong, that climate change is not an existential crisis demanding worldwide domestic and international responses. I want them to tell the moms and dads across the country that their children and grandchildren don't have the right to clean air and water. Look, the United States has no choice but to seize this opportunity and create millions of great paying jobs that your energy plan has suggested, and mine as well. An energy infrastructure of tomorrow, not going back to anything that was before, tomorrow. And we take a backseat to no one when it comes to fighting climate change or when it comes to creating good paying jobs, middle class jobs, union jobs.
That is Joe Biden taking a flamethrower to a field of straw men. In his very awkward co-broadcast with Bernie Sanders, it was just weird. He added this, cut number 3.
That's another issue. But we're going to finally achieve comprehensive immigration reform as well, put millions of citizens on a pathway to citizenship, including so many who are in the front lines right now.
You're going to put millions on the pathway to citizenship. Joe Biden, there's a reason he's not doing press conferences, people. The Democratic Party is stuck running for office on an anti-Trump campaign with no candidate to lead them. He's won because of the screwy logic they used in their primary system, the collapse of front runners, the unexpected rise of Pete Buttigieg, the unexpected collapse of Kamala Harris. So many things went wrong that they're stuck with Joe Biden. President calls him Sleepy Joe. I think it's Slow Joe. I know one thing. It's no-go Joe. He's no showing up anywhere where people can ask him questions and anything like a press conference, and that will not work. I want to go to something the vice president said at yesterday's White House briefing, cut number 12.
We were discussing today at the task force that when you look at the European Union as a whole, they have nearly 3 times the mortality rate that the United States of America has today. And that is a tribute to our extraordinary healthcare workers, their dedication, their tireless work. But it's also a tribute to the fact that the American people put into practice the mitigation efforts that the president counseled the nation to do on the advice of our best scientists now more than a month ago. And our hospitals were not overwhelmed, and are not overwhelmed at this hour. And I have to tell you, standing here today, I couldn't be more proud to stand alongside this president and to be a part of this team that has served the American people during this challenging hour.
All last night and during the presser, in fact, I predicted it on Twitter, as soon as the president showed the video, understand that the narrative, which is the combined collective effort of Manhattan Beltway media elites that hate Donald Trump. As soon as the narrative decided that the story would be that Donald Trump wasted February and Americans died, so Trump lied, people died. Just like Bush lied, people died. It's just the narrative wants to blame Trump for a worldwide pandemic unleashed upon the world by the inactivity or the complicity of the People's Republic of China's Communist Chinese Party. As soon as they decided that this would be their latest cudgel to attack Trump, Trump will not take it lying down. He's at war with the narrative. He is in a battle not with Joe Biden, who's an afterthought. The ticket is the mainstream media and Joe Biden as their running mate against Trump. He went out there and he had Dan Scavino and others put together a video to knock down the narrative. And immediately, I predicted it immediately that they would say it's not illegal, not in any way a campaign ad. It is a response to the narrative, which is false about what has happened in the United States. I want you to listen to, and you can watch on HughHewitt.com or my YouTube channel. If you can go over there right now to YouTube, type in Hugh Hewitt, you can watch the video that set the hair on fire of every establishmentarian in the Beltway Manhattan media elite, cut number 15.
People should be more concerned right now with the flu in this country.
A lot of people are concerned about the coronavirus because they're hearing a lot of news about it right now. But the reality is, comparing it to the flu, for example, it's not even close to being at that stage.
What if it is worse? Is this a moment where maybe countries put politics aside, a little bit of pride aside, and do we have U.S. officials? Should U.S. professionals such as yourself get involved?
How worried should Americans be about coronavirus?
Coronavirus is not going to cause a major issue in the United States.
Well, we've asked them to accelerate whatever they're doing in terms of a vaccine. We will be suspending all travel from Europe to the United States for the next 30 days. To unleash the full power of the federal government in this effort today, I am officially declaring a national emergency. Medicare patients can now visit any doctor by phone or video conference at no additional cost.
The first 1 million masks will be available immediately.
As there were more cases, and it was clear that it was spreading out of China, where it originated, the president took this move that he was widely criticized for by Democrats and even some Republicans at the time, which was he halted a number of flights from China into the U.S. The idea was to halt the spread of the disease, keep transmissions to a minimum. He was accused of xenophobia, accused of making a racist move. At the end of the day, it was probably effective because it did actually take a pretty aggressive measure against the spread of the virus.
His team is on it. They've been responsive late at night, early in the morning, and they've thus far been doing everything that they can do. And I want to say thank you. And I want to say that I appreciate it.
He returns calls. He reaches out. He's been proactive. We got that Mercy ship down here in Los Angeles. That was directly because he sent it down here. 2,000 medical units came to the state of California, these FMS, these field medical stations. And that's been very, very helpful.
The president has been outstanding through all this. The vice president's been outstanding. Members of the coronavirus task force, very responsive.
We had asked if we could have, New Jersey could have access to a piece of the beds that are on the USNS Comfort, and the president came back, called me a short few minutes before I walked in here to say indeed they would grant that to New Jersey. So that's a big step for us in addition to all the other capacity That news is literally hot off the press, and I thank the president and vice president who are on the call together.
President Trump approved Arizona's request for a presidential major disaster declaration. I want to thank the president for a quick turnaround. We requested this on a Wednesday, and we had approval by Saturday morning. And we are grateful to the administration for their continued support and responsiveness.
Well, first of all, I want to thank the president and the vice president for doing a really good job of communicating with all the governors.
That was the White House video that showed yesterday. It had some pauses in it where there were just letters. And again, the hair went on fire because, oh, it's a campaign video. No, it's not. It's a response to the narrative's collective attempt to blame the president for the virus, which has killed 20,000 plus Americans. And the president is upset by that, as I am, because I think it's the craziest perspective I've ever seen in my life. The virus is the responsibility of the Communist Party of China. They covered it up. They continue to cover it up. They continue to run the risk of infecting other parts of the world. The virus is rampaging through the third world. We get no news about Ecuador. We get no questions about Brazil. We get no attention paid whatsoever to other countries in Asia that might be suffering because the media is intent on driving Donald Trump from office. It's just a partisan media. Just understand that 9 out of 10 people or 19 out of 20 or 99 out of 100 people that sit in those chairs hate Donald Trump. And they don't much care about you. That's what you've got to understand. They just don't care about you. They care about the blue bubble in which they live. And when reporters go looking for a moment, and Paula Reed was looking for a moment yesterday. That's all that was. She wanted a moment. I'm ready for my close-up. Remember Sunset Boulevard? If I had a producer, we'd go out with Sunset Boulevard. I'm ready for my close-up. And she wasn't ready for her close-up. It was a disaster for her. Because, it's not fair to define someone based upon one moment in their career. But this is Paula Reed's career, cut number 11.
Are you doing this voluntarily, or did the president?
No, I'm doing it. Everything I do is voluntarily. Please, don't even imply that.
You never want a national hero to rebuke you if you're in the media. It'd be like being rebuked by General Mattis at the end of the Iraq invasion. I mean, it's devastating. It's what defines her career. I'm sorry, it just is. I'm not sorry I take Relief Factor every day, and I'm taking it right now. I carry curcumin, resveratrol, and omega. Yesterday we had thunderstorms all day, but I got a brief moment, got a good hour and 10 minutes out there between storms. Got my 6 in, not sure about today. I think we have beautiful weather in the Beltway today. I hope so. I think it's going to be that way. But whether or not it's great weather, I always try and get those steps in. You should be doing 10,000 a day, 12,000 if you can, 15,000 if you really got the luxury of time. And ReliefFactor.com allows you to do that. It makes those small aches and pains that accompany aging and exercise, they support the temporary relief of them. And I really do believe you ought to try it. And at the same time that you go to ReliefFactor.com and get the starter pack for $19.95, don't forget HonorBoundCoffee.com. Please remember our troops. Every cup of coffee you take and you sip from HonorBound Coffee, it's delivered directly to your home. You can subscribe to it. 4 different blends, 4 different grinds. Every time you sip from HonorBound Coffee, you're supporting military families because of the work of Pete and Seth Talbot. HonorBoundCoffee.com. Coming right back, America with Drucker. Stay tuned. It's the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Are you doing this voluntarily, or did the president?
I'm doing it. Everything I do is voluntarily. Please, don't even imply that.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. That was Paula Reed asking Anthony Fauci if he was lying, and Anthony Fauci responding he's not, of course. And David Drucker joins me now from the Washington Examiner. David, that was an extraordinary moment. You know, when you go looking for a moment, when you look for your close-up, you better be ready because it defines a career, and I think that's a career-defining moment.
Well, look, could be. I mean, you know, I think it's a tricky situation because I think that we need to ask the president and the people who are advising him tough questions. And the key is coming up with the tough questions that are fair, within context, and that are going to elicit information. And, you know, as I saw yesterday, as I see most days, and Dwayne and I talk about this, it was sort of like a Rorschach test, right? So if you're not pleased with how Trump's been handling the pandemic and you're not pleased with Trump in general, you probably were okay with that line of questioning. If you are pleased, then you are not. And if you're somewhere in the middle, you just want a solution and you want things to get fixed and get back to normal.
You know, David, there is a very small universe of people who both find good things to say about Trump and who have blistered him in public, and I'm in it, right? I've got Trump tattoos to prove it, and I do not recall ever asking a public official if they were lying. I don't recall ever asking anyone, are you being made to make this statement? I honestly, I don't know Paula. I didn't recognize her. I don't watch CBS News, so maybe that's why. Do you know her?
I don't know her personally, no, but I know of her.
Okay, so I didn't even know of her. I mean, I just think what happens when you put reporters on camera is they look for that moment, and when they get that moment, they either botch it or rise to it. And this, I mean, the way to ask that question is, I think, if you're thinking neutrally, Dr. Fauci, is there any moment at which the president rejected your medical advice? Isn't that the way to ask the question?
Well, I think that's a better question to ask. I think, you know, there are interesting parts to this. I think on the one hand, and this was my favorite part of yesterday's exchanges, which a term I use loosely, if you're going to study things, is that Trump was asked why he retweeted somebody who had tweeted that it was time to fire Fauci. And I think that given that the president uses Twitter to announce policy, announce hirings and firings, and not just as, you know, a place to crack jokes, it's fair to ask if the president has been considering that, and if Mr. Fauci has any opinions regarding that. Has he heard anything? Has he had any discussions? And I think that was a fair line of questioning, which was interesting, which the president batted down. But that was definitely fair.
You know what the best answer to that is? We all know what the best retweets are not endorsements, and moreover,
yes, I know. I would say this though: he's the president of the United States, so it's a little bit different.
Yeah, but I think I also would have said there's a group of people that want me to fire Anthony Fauci. There's proof of it, and I'm not firing Anthony Fauci, so there's proof that I'm not going to fire. I mean, there's so many different ways. I just don't understand, with millions of people sick and hundreds of thousands of people on the point of death, what is wrong with the White House press corps? I just think it's fundamentally unstable.
Well, look, I think you see it. A whole lot of questions being asked. Some are on point. Some are tough but fair. Some elicit information. Others don't. This is part of what happens when you have a news conference that goes on so long, and not just that, so long every single day. Is you run out of those questions to ask, and you start asking others. I mean, and I think from a political standpoint, I think Trump likes this part of it. I think he finds it politically useful. I think if he didn't, he would cut it off or not engage. And, you know, so there is that part of it, which is not to absolve anybody who asks questions maybe that shouldn't be asked or that some people find ridiculous and unfair. But I think that the president finds that part of it advantageous.
Let me ask David, if Joe Biden held a press conference every day, would it be covered? Because I believe it would be, and I would watch it. But he doesn't, for reasons I suspect are that he's not good at it.
Well, yeah, it would be covered. I think so. I don't know if it would be covered for 2 hours, but I think it would be covered. I don't know that it would be covered the same way that the Trump press conferences are covered, simply because Joe
I know
Biden wants to
they
be a
throw him
policymaker,
underhanded
but he's not.
softballs. I mean, it'd be batting practice for Joe, but he'd miss.
Well, that's a different story. That's possible.
All right, David M. Drucker, follow him on Twitter. We're closing with Sunset Boulevard because Paula Reed had her moment yesterday. Her Sunset Boulevard moment. I'm ready for my makeup, Mr. DeMille. No, you weren't. Coming right back with Byron York. Don't go anywhere, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. Morning glory, America. Bones are high, Canada. I'm Hugh Hewitt inside the ReliefFactor.com command center inside the Beltway where it's going to be a sunny day. So you made a break for the Safeway yesterday and loaded up on chocolate because I was out of chocolate. It's the only reason I'll leave the house is you got to be able to have chocolate. Byron York joins me from the Washington Examiner. You can follow him on Fox News, of course, or follow him on Twitter at Byron York. I consider it one of the indispensable feeds out there. Good morning, Byron. How are everyone in the York clan?
Good morning. Things going fine at York headquarters so far. Thank you for asking.
All right. Now, I got to begin with, I'm going to get to your Twitter feed here in a second, but the blue bubble is a hell of a drug, right? It is. It's just amazing to me that they think the country is upset with Donald Trump and not with them. But I want to play for you. I don't know Paula Reed. I'm sure she's a nice person. But you're always defined by one or two moments in your career, right? You're always defined by one or two moments. Yep. Here's cut number 11, Paula Reed and Anthony Fauci.
Are you doing this voluntarily or did the president?
No, I'm doing it. Everything I do is voluntarily. Please, don't even imply that.
Now, Byron, the reality is when you make a really dumbass move, as Red used to say in that 70s show, and I've done it myself. I banned Bob Woodward from the Nixon Library when I was 32 years old. It was stupid, and the president called me up and had me reverse it that day. When you make a dumbass move, it sticks. It's a tattoo, right? That's going to be on Paula Reed's resume forever.
I think so. And look, but I don't think that she asked anything that other reporters weren't thinking or might have asked at some point, which is that, there's been kind of a media fixation on will the president fire Dr. Fauci? And remember, on a completely different plane, there was all this media fixation on will the president fire Robert Mueller? And that becomes a big story when there are, in fact, a lot of other things going on in the virus story yesterday that people could have been asking about.
I'm going to turn to that, but I want to make a point that when you're an addict in the blue bubble, and as I say, the blue bubble is a hell of a drug, you cover that narrative. The narrative takes over. So whether it's Mueller being fired or whether or not it's Bill Barr perverting the story, whatever is the drug of the day, everybody takes it and they turn into automatons. Meanwhile, you point out in your tweet feed 9 minutes ago, I know some in media get excited during Trump briefings, but given that New York is this epicenter of the virus, and by the way, that's worldwide, as far as we know, China's lying.
Correct.
Most cases, death by far. When the New York governor says, I believe the worst is over, isn't that the lead story? The answer is yes, except the blue bubble says no.
Well, listen, I know we'll talk about some Article 2 stuff in a few minutes, but when the governor of New York, and the media has been paying a lot of attention to Governor Cuomo as a voice in this crisis because his state is absolutely the worst in the nation and the world, as you say. I believe New York State has more cases than any other country in the world. So when he comes out, and he's been saying in the last several days, the number of new cases has not been rising as much. We hope we appear to be flattening the curve. He's been kind of hinting in this. And then yesterday he comes out and says, and I'm quoting, I believe the worst is over if we continue to be smart, and I believe we can now start on the path to normalcy. And we can have a plan where you start to see some businesses reopening. Now, that's news if it's in New York. This is the worst of the worst. So, and this is a authoritative voice. So I was really struck when he said that yesterday, and I was also struck when after the briefing, all the news was Trump, where you had this important figure in New York saying something incredibly important.
And let's get to the Article 2 question about the president's authority is total. I wish, I sometimes wonder if any member of the White House press corps, I know Paula is a lawyer, right? She's a Villanova lawyer, so she's smart. Have they got like the neuralizer that they use in Men in Black? And do they forget Ike sending troops to Little Rock? When a governor does something that is patently illegal, the federal government can step in under certain federal authorities, but the president wasn't saying that. He was saying, I'm not going to answer your questions because I'm not going to deal with hypotheticals because the president's authority is total and I don't want to use it. but they wouldn't let go because they want Byron for him to say something that's authoritarian. That's what they want.
And by the way, the president at the same time said he would be making whatever decisions he makes in consultation with the governors. And so it struck me that look, the president did not close down the United States economy. To the degree that it's closed down, the biggest reason, of course, is the people's fear of the virus, and that's what closed it down. And if you announce tomorrow that, hey, everything's open, go out to a restaurant, book an airplane flight, head to the theater, people would not do it because they're still afraid of the virus. And until that happens, there won't be until that's gone, there won't be a full reopening. But these were decisions that were made by governors and mayors in some cases, and the president, usually under federal guidelines. So that's kind of the way it works. And if everybody wants to get excited about what the president says, because as you say with the Little Rock example, yes, there is an example where the president could take action if necessary, but I think it's pretty clear how this is actually going to work.
It's iterative. And Tony Fauci at the end gave an explanation which I thought was intuitive, but apparently the blue bubble dissolves this intuition as well, which is Americans respond the same way to a crisis that everyone else in the world does. We make a guess as to what is happening. We get data. We change our guess. We get more data. We change our guess. We get more data. We change our guess because we are not omniscient, omnipresent, and all-powerful, omnipotent. And therefore, we do the best that we can. I think Tony Fauci is saying, we're doing the best that we can, people, and China lied to us. Can I translate? Is that a fair translation of what Tony Fauci said?
Well, that is a fair translation. But I do think, look, some people can be, if it turns out that some of the doomsday scenarios, 2.2 million dead, something like that, were off by enormous distances. I think we do have to look back at, one, how those scenarios were made, and two, why they were reported so breathlessly and so unskeptically. So we don't know how this is going to turn out. We don't know if, as Andrew Cuomo said yesterday, the worst is over. We don't know if it might bounce back. There are a lot of things.
Thank you, because I was about to interrupt you, Byron. If you've read the great influenza, you know that Phase 2 in 1918 was far worse than Phase 1. And my fear as a grandparent and yours as a parent is that Phase 2 would mutate to take our children or our grandchildren. And in 1918, it became deadlier. Dr. Fauci told me there's no scientific evidence one way or the other yet as to whether it will grow deadlier or less deadly. But we can't let our guard down, especially when China says, oh, we don't have no problem here. And the AEI announces yesterday they're probably understating by 90% the number of cases in the PRC.
I know, and it's incredible when you see the United States has more cases than any country in the world. Well, that's certainly true when I look at the charts, but I don't know how many China had. So you can't say anything about the world dimension of it without having some accurate information from China, which we don't have, much less on the origins of this. So we're not going to know about it as a world phenomenon until we find out something, and I'm not sure we will.
And Byron, I want
something accurate from China.
I want to close on this because you're very fair, and I don't want to be too hard on the media, but I'm a lawyer by profession. There are standards of professional responsibility. If you breach them, you're disbarred and you commit legal malpractice and you'll be sued. With doctors, it's a profession. Journalism isn't a profession, the late Michael Kelly said. It's a craft. And Correct. You can be good at it or bad at it, and anyone can practice it. There is no licensing. I just think Beltway journalism has crashed, and I don't know if you agree with me.
Well, I hate to agree with you in this case, but I think you may be right. Britt Hume said a while back is that Trump thinks it's all about himself, and so does the press. And that we saw that yesterday. I mean, we just saw it yesterday when there were important developments outside of the White House briefing room. and the briefing became the story.
I 100% agree. Byron, 100% agree. I'm so glad that we're not China, that we have a daily briefing. I'm so glad, but I wish it would be used for better purposes by everyone involved. Thank you, Byron York. Follow him on Twitter at Byron York. Come right back, 1-800-520-1234. 1-800-520-1234 connects you to this, The Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of The Hugh Hewitt Show brought to you by Sierra Pacific Mortgage. For more info, call 888-888-1172.
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. Like a rolling stone, I show up in your shoe every morning, whether or not you want it. And then you do. The news you need, the analysis you must have, including this breaking bit of news. AstraZeneca is going to test its cancer drug, Calquence, on coronavirus patients. Why? Because there appears to be a correlation with the ability of Calquence to reduce the overreaction of the immune system known as the cytokine storm that leads to the deadly nature of the pneumonia that many of the COVID fatalities suffer from. And that's big news. AstraZeneca stock, of course, very, very far up on the news that they are repurposing it to try it. It's already going to be used off-label by desperate people. That kind of news rockets around the medical community who are treating desperately ill patients. One of my frustrations with the White House press corps is that millions of people are hanging on every word about progress against the disease because their loved ones are on ventilators or they're in hospitals or they're feeling ill. And instead, the narrative is after Donald Trump to beat him in November. That's why they're frustrated. That's why I'm frustrated. There's a huge once in a lifetime, once in a century disaster unfolding in front of us with a market consequence, which is disintermediation of vast numbers of people, with stories out there about Josh Hawley's plan or Mnuchin's plan, and the little blue bubble feeds on the little blue bubble. And the little blue bubble is so small. It's 500 people. It's just remarkable. What about the market? Brought to you by AndrewandTodd.com. Andrew Del Rey, Todd Avakian together. They run AndrewandTodd.com and their team. It's an extension of Sierra Pacific Mortgage, but AndrewandTodd.com. If you answer a couple of questions, we'll tell you whether or not you ought to refinance your house and get money out at these ridiculously low rates. They will tell you whether or not you ought to buy a piece of property and how much you qualify for. They'll give you a pre-qualification letter. They'll find you a realtor, right? If you're trying to move into Alexandria because you're coming from Seattle, you're listening to me right now in Seattle on the early morning drive to Amazon headquarters. If you're an essential employee and you got the word you're moving to HQ2, you call up Gordon Wood in Alexandria because he works with AndrewandTodd.com, or you call 888-888-1172 and they'll take care of you. Overseas at this hour, Germany is up 1%. Japan was up 3% overnight. Hong Kong was up 0.5%. I have no idea if it's going to be a good day or a bad day. I just know that Amazon yesterday, which is the primary beneficiary of the disintermediation in the market, was up $126, 6%. And I own Amazon, so I say, well, that's good. I'd rather it not be up 6% and we be past the virus, but people are factoring in. The market is beginning to realize people who shifted to Whole Foods delivery or Instacart or Zoom, they're not going back. If they became a Netflix subscriber, they're not going back. If they're watching Amazon Prime movies, they're not going back. And so in pre-market trading today, Amazon up $25 again. AndrewandTodd.com, because the 10-year Treasury remains at all-time lows. I don't even report now. It's at 0.75%. I don't know what it means. They're not lending money at 2.75%. I don't know what the rate is. Call up Andrew, 888-888-1172, or Todd, 888-888-1172, and find out. When we come back, we'll talk with Alex Conant of Firehouse Strategy about what their latest polling shows in the battleground states. Remember, of course, the story of the day is not what the White House press corps thinks it is. It's how the world is doing in the battle against the virus. And you hear about that story every day right here on The Hugh Hewitt Show.
Don't forget to sign up for the Hughiverse. All of Hugh's broadcasts on demand, the after show, which in my opinion is worth the price all by itself, Dwayne FM, and all sorts of bonus content. www.hughiverse.com.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Thank you for listening. I'm joined by Alex Conant, partner at Firehouse Strategies. I'd probably hire Firehouse Strategies if I had any PR problems, but I don't. People love me. Alex, good morning. How are you?
I'm good. Good morning, Hugh. It's too bad you don't have any problems. I'd love to.
I don't have any problems. I don't need you, but I do. I do love your polling, and I'm going to dive into the crosstabs because there's a stunning. I always have Alex on whenever Firehouse does a new poll. And the headlines are always about the presidential. I don't care about that. It's too far out. Here's what I care about. Has your work situation changed due to the coronavirus outbreak? The number of people who have been laid off or had their hours cut back between the ages of 18 and 34 are 35%. It is 25% between 35 and 44. It is 20% between 45 and 64. Therefore, working age America has either been fired or had their hours cut back at a rate that is astonishing, and I do not believe is yet registered in the political consciousness of how devastated the economic tsunami has left the American middle class.
That's a really good point, Hugh, and a great finding from our survey. Look, we asked people, do you think the economy is going to improve anytime soon in the next month? Only 20% of people said that was going to get better in the next month. In fact, 54, over half of Americans think it's going to get worse in the next month. And I bet if you dive into those crosstabs, you're going to see the people that are really impacted by this, but from an economic perspective, a lot of minorities and a lot of young voters. And you're right, there are definitely going to be political repercussions to that. I don't know what they are yet. I think it's too soon to say. But you can't have this sort of economic turbulence without some sort, especially hitting the middle class as hard as this is hitting the middle class.
And this is why when
real impacts.
Treasury, did you watch the briefing yesterday?
I did, yeah.
I watch every minute of the briefing because I got to see, stuff just pops up at every time. Steve Mnuchin got up there and started talking about sector by sector relief, and I thought to myself, he's done a good job. He is clueless. Josh Hawley is the guy out there screaming, hose the country down with money, business interruption for everybody, might cost us $500 billion to $1 trillion a month, but just do it until we reopen. And Josh Hawley is right, Alex Conant, and I think the president must be inclined to go in his direction because this sector by sector stuff isn't going to work.
Well, it's really hard to micromanage the U.S. economy. I worked at the White House. In fact, my first day at the White House in the Bush administration was the day Katrina hit. I worked in the Office of Management Budget, and it was part of our job was doling out money for New Orleans and the South generally after Katrina. And as everyone knows, that did not go too smoothly, and that was just one city. Now we're talking about basically a Katrina happening in just about every city, every state in the country, right? This is the first time we've had a major disaster declaration in all 50 states. And the economic toll it's taking is just unfathomable. And I agree, it's hard for bureaucrats in Washington or members of Congress to go in and sector by sector try to fix this. In fact, I think in some ways, the more they pick winners and losers, the bigger the political risk they are, because it means some people are going to get left behind. And right now, if you look at our polling, a lot of people in the middle class feel like they're at risk of getting left behind here.
Yeah, the economic tsunami, I'm referring to it as an economic tsunami. Apparently, the folks who are employed, who own Amazon stock, and I fall into both of those categories, so I work overtime to be aware of people who are neither employed nor own Amazon stock. Apparently, the elite political class doesn't understand what has happened, or they would all be lined up behind Josh Hawley saying, we want that. We know it's going to cost. Again, I'm very aware of the number. It's $500 billion a month to $1 trillion a month because it's going to be about 50% of GDP per month, which is $24 trillion. And we have a $22 trillion debt. I get it, but I don't know what the alternative is, Alex. And I wonder if you see an opportunity politically for whichever party embraces not universal health care, not higher unemployment benefits, but everybody into the lifeboats, we're saving everybody.
Yeah, I mean, look, I worry about that because, look, that is a big government solution. Yeah, the idea that the government is going to pull, the economy out of this, as you put it, economic tsunami, as a limited government free market guy, that worries me. Now, I think the government needs to do everything it can to provide people the relief that they need right now so that people don't starve, people don't lose their homes. But long term, the way we turn this thing around is by getting the U.S. economy going again, getting stores reopened, getting people back to work. And look, that I'm not smart enough to know how or when to do that. I leave that to the experts. But I think the president is right that you clearly want to do it as soon as possible. And I think governors want to do it as soon as possible because I realize, look, we live in a market economy. This is not a centrally run economy. Our economy is going to continue to suffer. People are going to continue to lose income and lose jobs as long as the market is effectively shut down. And the second point I make Hugh is that, look, it's a sad truth, but during recessions, the rich generally tend to make out okay because, as you point out, look, if you have a job right now, if you own Amazon stock right now, you're doing okay.
Oh my gosh! Yeah,
it's the middle class and the poor who really fall behind in recessions. We saw that in 2008, and I worry a lot we're going to see it now. And the sort of social and economic disruptions that come out of that are real.
I had a discussion yesterday with an old friend who pointed out that under the Hawley proposal, money would go to alternative weeklies that are going to close anyway. And I thought to myself, yeah, but it's got to go to everyone. It's got to go to friend and foe alike. It's got to go to not-for-profit religious groups. It's got to go to colleges and universities, or we will end up. And my analogy, Alex, and I'll just try it, and then I want to go to a crosstab on the presidential, is that if you've got a full street of cars who have dead batteries, and everybody's got to get out of that street right away because the flood is coming. If you send one tow truck to jump one car at a time, you'll never make it. You've got to jump every car at every time with you got to send every AAA truck in the country to that street in order to make sure everyone gets off of it if they're all stranded on the island with dead batteries. We got dead batteries everywhere. We can't pick which trucks to start or cars to start.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and that was the problem in 2008 from a political perspective, and I'd argue also from an economic perspective, where the government very much picked winners and losers, and I think so far they risk making the same mistake this time around.
Yep, everyone's got to win. Now let me go to the poll. The reason I love Firehouse strategies. Don't get me wrong. All I care about is Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. All I care. I mean, you might prove to me North Carolina's in play. I don't believe it. I don't believe Florida's in play. I don't believe Iowa's in play. I don't think Arizona's in play. I think the only thing that they're in play are those three states. What do you know about those three states?
So we've been doing quarterly polling, and they're just those three states, as you know, Hugh. And those polls are fascinating because they show the president doing pretty well. Earlier this year during impeachment, he was winning in those three states. Impeachment was clearly a political miscalculation by the Democrats. In our last poll, which was right before the coronavirus hit, it was basically tied. Him and Biden in those three states. And look, we know they're going to be close, and that's what our polling showed. Since then, with the coronavirus, we've been doing daily tracking polls, and for those, we've just been doing national polls, in part because this is a national event, and we're interested in seeing how people around the country are impacted, and so we can compare the Northeast to, say, the Southeast. Where there's some real disparities in how people are thinking about the virus, in part because the epicenter is in New York, not Dallas. But so look, I think those three states are going to be close nationally. According to our polling, the president's not doing so great right now. People are very supportive of the job governors are doing, but even Congress has a higher approval rating than the president's. The president's is sitting right around 50%, which is okay for re-election. He's losing in the head-to-head, but look, we're so far out. I don't put a lot of weight into the head-to-head with Biden. We're more asking about that to see if there's any sort of consistent trend over the next month or two as we continue to do these.
Yeah, what I continue to be most interested in is what does Western Pennsylvania think about Joe Biden and that whole I'm from Scranton Joe stuff. He wants to shut down the coal industry. I think he's lost Pennsylvania. I don't think the African-American community is solid for him in the way that it was solid for President Obama. I think he has to put Kamala Harris on the ticket. Because of that, a lot of people say he has to put Klobuchar because they need Minnesota and Wisconsin. Does your polling give you any hint on those are the only two viable candidates? It's going to be one or the other. Do you have any polling indication on who would be better for the ticket?
we haven't polled any of the vice presidential questions. I will say Biden consistently polled the best out of all of the Democratic candidates. I don't think we ever asked about Kamala Harris, but we did certainly ask about Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, Beto O'Rourke, basically any candidate who sort of had a moment. And none of them really ever polled as well as Biden. I think part of that is just name ID, and part of that is just familiarity with Biden. He's generally had pretty low negatives, but I agree with you. As people learn more about some of his policy positions, especially on some of the energy issues, which I think is going to really be an issue in Western Pennsylvania this cycle, he's going to have some challenges. And he hasn't gotten the kind of bump out of winning a party's nomination that you would typically see because everyone's been focused on the coronavirus. I mean, he hasn't been able to have a victory rally since winning the nomination, and how that plays out is going to be fascinating.
And I, by the way, if he doesn't start doing daily press conferences, the concerns about his fitness for office are going to grow and grow and grow. Hey, thank you so much, Alex Conant. Follow him at Alex Conant, C-O-N-A-N-T. Follow Firehouse Strategies at the same, and I just tweeted it out. Follow me, please, the Job Creators Network. You've got to join it if you've got a small business. They're going to do a big relief bill. All right, I call it Phase End. End phase legislative relief. What's it going to look like? Job Creators Network is going to represent you. If you belong to Job Creators Network, a small business, go and sign up. Tell them what you need right now. I think it's the Holly plan. And if you're going to sit down today and watch a movie, I got interrupted yesterday. I'm going to watch Back to the Future Part 2 and got started. And then the White House briefing began, and it went on for like 3 hours. So then I didn't watch a movie. I went and read Madeleine Albright's new book, which is terrific. She's on tomorrow. NoSafeSpaces.com is where Dennis Prager and Adam Carolla hold forth. No Safe Spaces. I would really encourage you to go, and their discount is sale 25. You get 25% off. You can watch it until the end of December. NoSafeSpaces.com. Now let me tell you about HonorBound Coffee. I try and remember to do this separately from ReliefFactor.com, but I do it at the same time. HonorBound Coffee is a subscription service. Coffee will come to your home once a month or once every 2 months, whatever, or how much you drink it. Great coffee, best coffee in America, 4 different blends, 4 different grinds. Take your choice. I think that's 16 different options. They're all great. And then once you sign up, it just keeps coming. And 100% of the profits that HonorBound Coffee makes from their coffee subscription, from the whole company, HonorBound Coffee, go to serve military families, whether the Injured Marine Semper Fi Fund or the military YMCA's HonorBoundCoffee.com. Thank you, Pete and Seth Talbot, for doing that. ReliefFactor.com, I already took it in the first hour. I got my 6 miles in yesterday. I don't know what I'm going to do today. I got to work on the studio. We blew out all the fuses inside the Beltway yesterday with an electrical storm, so I've got my toolkit out, and I will be I'll be revising and rewiring everything because Dwayne won't help me. So I'll do it myself. But ReliefFactor.com will be there in case it wrenches my back. I'll have to be into some pretty tight nooks and crannies. It's always dangerous for me to do that. But ReliefFactor.com will get me through. $19.95. Get started today. Tom Cotton joins me next. America, don't go anywhere. It's the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by Job Creators Network.
Welcome back, America. Hugh Hewitt, joined now by United States Senator Tom Cotton from Arkansas. Good morning, Senator Cotton. Everybody fine on Team Cotton?
Good morning, Hugh. It's good to be back on with you. As far as we know, everyone in my whole extended family is doing well. Hope that's the same for the Hewitt family and all your listeners, too.
Thank you. Senator Cotton, I want to cover the Josh Rogan column this morning, but before I do, I want to ask you about Josh Hawley's proposal, which I believe I'm going to endorse in the Washington Post today because I think it's critically necessary that we get relief to everyone impacted. What do you make of Senator Hawley's proposal?
Hugh, I haven't had a chance to talk to Josh about it yet, but I'm open-minded to any idea that would help workers who have been laid off or lost hours and families who are under distress at this time of great national peril. When we moved quickly with the CARES Act, the simplest way to do that was through the unemployment system and through the direct tax rebate system. But as we have time to move a bit more deliberately in the future, I'm open to examining Josh's proposal, something like what Germany does, which is designed to help companies keep workers employed at lower pay rates, and the government makes up the difference. I think we need to do everything we can to keep folks working and connected to their employer. So once the economy gets back on its feet, we're not having employers struggling to find workers and workers struggling to find jobs.
That's exactly it. I agree with that, and I agree with him. We'll come back to that. I got to turn to Josh Rogan. I read Josh Rogan's column in the Washington Post this morning about the bat studies at the Wuhan virology lab, and now I want a flamethrower to be dispatched to Yunnan and to the caves there. But the more important issue is, do you think the Chinese accidentally released this virus on the world as a consequence of these bits of evidence we're seeing?
So to orient all your listeners, Hugh, Josh reports on the existence of cables from our embassy in China from 2018. More than 2 years ago, about alarming safety concerns at both the laboratories in Wuhan. But of course, when coronaviruses like the SARS coronavirus or like this coronavirus are so contagious and can be so deadly, the highest safety practices are needed. And apparently some of our personnel in the Chinese embassy, when they visited the labs in Wuhan, were alarmed at the shoddy safety practices. Now, as I've said, going back to early February, we don't know the origins of this virus. We do know the Chinese Communist Party lied about it originating in that so-called food or wet market. It's only responsible, especially in light of this reporting, that we examine the possibility it originated in those laboratories. Now, again, that doesn't mean that it's man-made or engineered or that it was a bioweapon. It could be something as simple as shoddy construction or operational practices or just poor practice among the employees there. Someone got infected and walked out, or they disposed of the animals on which they were experimenting in an unsafe way. The Chinese Communist Party owes it to the world to be upfront and transparent about what was happening in those labs so we can understand more about this virus if it in fact originated from those labs.
Did you learn about the cables from the Rogan column?
No comment, Hugh.
All right. There are similar concerns about the nearby Wuhan Center for Disease Control and Prevention Lab, which is a biosecurity level 2 lab, which ought to be, according to these cables, which originated from our embassy, a level 4 lab. It leaves the impression that perhaps, as we have learned about Chinese manufacturing of PPE, they just don't have our standards, and they ought not to be entrusted with making our stuff or doing this kind of research.
Yeah, let's just say that it's grading on a curve to call any laboratory in China biosafety level 4 or level 2. What they call level 4 is probably what we would call 2. What they call 2 might be what we call a high school chemistry lab. China has a history of bad laboratory construction and practices. In 2004, after the SARS epidemic had subsided, the SARS coronavirus escaped from one of their labs. These scientists at our embassy in Beijing obviously were worried about practices there going back as far as 2 years ago. And surely the Chinese officials knew about these concerns as well, yet they apparently did not do much to try to remedy them. And in fact, now they're engaged in a campaign to disappear anyone with any knowledge about what's happening in Wuhan or at these laboratories or any to suppress any kind of research or information about the origins of this virus.
It's so obvious. I got to close quickly by playing for you cut number 11 from yesterday's press conference, Paula Reed and Anthony Fauci. Cut number 11.
Are you doing this voluntarily, or did
No,
the president?
I'm doing it. Everything I do is voluntarily. Please, don't even imply that.
You know, Senator Cotton, the blue bubble is a hell of a drug. Every day the president has a press conference. Never does President Xi have a press conference. The general secretary of the Communist Party never comes out and talks to people. What is wrong with the blue bubble media?
Yeah, I think that's a well-taken point, Hugh, is that Donald Trump is speaking transparently every day directly to the press, and Chairman Xi never does, and everything he says is disinformation. I think so many of the media in Washington are so deranged by their hatred of Donald Trump that every bit of news is spun as anti-Trump news in one way or another.
I think you're right. I just do not believe in the middle of a pandemic. They can't shake it off for a day. For a day. Tom Cotton, thank you. Josh Rogan's column is available at WashingtonPost.com. Very important to go and read it. Confirming suspicions that a lot of us have held for a long time. Don't go anywhere, America. It's the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by No Safe Spaces.
Morning, glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. Hugh Hewitt here, inside the Beltway, bringing you all the news you need, the analysis you must have every morning, 6 to 9 a.m. East Coast time, inside the Beltway. Tape delayed in a few places, but I'm glad to have you wherever you are, however you're listening. Maybe at HughHewitt.com, perhaps over at TownHallTV.com, or you might be on my YouTube channel, Hugh Hewitt at YouTube. I'm joined now by Bob Costa. He is the host of Washington Week in Review, which you can watch every single Friday night. Of course, he is a correspondent with the Washington Post. Like me, a consultant to MSNBC and NBC News, and a friend. Hello, Robert. How are you? Is everybody healthy in the Costa family?
They are. Thank you very much, Hugh.
I'm glad to hear that. Bob, I am most interested in part of yesterday's press conference that got very little attention, which was Secretary of Treasury Mnuchin talking about ongoing negotiations with the Hill. Yesterday, I spoke with Josh Hawley at length about his plan, to which I'm attracted. What's the state of play about phase 5, 6, whatever you want to call it, the next big legislative package?
Well, before phase 4 negotiations begin, they first have to figure out what are they going to do with the small business negotiations that stalled last week. And it's a total deadlock right now. Speaker Pelosi is asking for an additional $250 billion on top of the $251 billion that Republicans want for small businesses, and you're not seeing any kind of negotiation go forward. At the same time as that small business negotiation happens, there are early talks about phase 4, like Senator Hawley spoke with you about, but that's really at a preliminary stage.
Now, I saw numbers this morning from Firehouse Strategies, which suggests that my suspicion that the economic tsunami that has washed over the country is very little understood inside the Beltway in terms of the number of people who have been dislocated and whose earnings have been hit. Is the fact that we're deadlocked because Congress isn't here or because Congress doesn't care?
Part of it's Congress isn't here. So this is such a leadership-driven dynamic. Usually during these kind of big major national moments, you're going to have people like Senator Hawley or rank-and-file House members piping up and making their views known. But because they're all back in their districts and the economic data is overwhelming, but people aren't in Washington to digest it and articulate their own positions, this really comes down to Leader McConnell and Speaker Pelosi and Secretary Mnuchin. And we've seen in every phase so far, at the end of the day, it's come down to Secretary Mnuchin working with Democrats. McConnell has tried to insert himself more this time around, but there's a lot of anger and frustration among the leadership ranks about whether Pelosi can work with McConnell and vice versa.
What bothers me about yesterday is that Secretary Mnuchin still seems to be stuck on industry-specific measures when Josh Hawley is suggesting, hey, look around you. Everybody, there isn't a house standing on the beach where the tsunami hit. We need to flood the country with basically the German approach, 80% of all business interruption costs. And that's probably $500 billion a month. It might be $800 billion a month for 2 or 3 months until we can restart, and hopefully it doesn't come back. Have you heard from Leader McConnell's office whether or not he's open to that sort of an extraordinary intervention?
There's a lot more openness to intervention. You and I both spoke to Leader McConnell in recent days on the record, and we're talking to our own sources. And it's clear that there's been I don't hesitate to use the word, almost a revolution in GOP world when it comes to direct payments, when it comes to increasing the debt and deficit to try to get money into Americans' hands or small businesses' hands or even some big businesses' hands. And so you're just seeing lawmakers on both sides hearing so many stories of economic pain from their own constituents that the old ideological barricades are down.
Robert, I want to pause on that because it's very, very true. And it has nothing to do with ideology. It has to do with the fact that this is genuinely an unprecedented moment in American history where the government shut down the economy. Now, by government, I mean state, local, and federal, all of it. I make no distinction. They have ordered the country to stay at home. Therefore, they took the healthiest economy in the history of the planet and shut it down. So this isn't really a question of whether or not you're a Keynesian or a Friedman. It's a question of how do you restart an economy? And we've never, ever done that before. And my analogy, see if you like this, if you got a whole street full of cars whose batteries are out and you send one AAA truck to start them all. It will take forever. You've got to send a truck to every car or we won't restart this all at the same time. And if there's a flood coming, you got to get it going. I think that's where the urgency comes from. And I think it's not just Josh Hawley. Do you hear it from other people in the Republican caucus?
I do hear it. Similar refrains. At the same time, there is a lot of anxiety, and you may have picked this up too, Hugh, because so many lawmakers, including Republicans, have told me privately that even if they inject a lot of cash into this economy, $1 trillion more, $2 trillion more, on top of the 2.2 they've already done, suppose the market goes from 22, 23 down to 17, then 15, then 10, then 9 this summer if things don't really pick up and the virus has a second wave. They're just a little bit worried if you turn the faucet on now, it does restart the cars, to use your analogy, but suppose it gets even worse down the line. How much intervention is really going to be needed to sustain this whole thing?
Well, J.P. Morgan just released its numbers, and their profit is down 70%. That's in a full, not a full quarter. That's only half of a bad quarter. There is no tomorrow, in my view. You can worry about that if it doesn't work. And all I'm really concerned about is, can I trust the Democrats in the House to just do relief to the world as it existed and not to try and impose? This is what the big problem is going to be. To try and impose a systemic change upon the American economy at a moment of crisis will not work. But to flood the existing businesses will. What do you hear from the Democratic side? Are they willing to just flood the economy with money in an attempt to start it, or are they going to insist on systemic changes?
Well, they don't think the Republicans are putting enough money on the table, and that's why the talks have stalled. Speaker Pelosi, as you know, wants hundreds of millions for hospitals, health centers. She wants to make sure that money's getting into the hands of businesses owned by minorities and women, and she's holding her ground on that. And it's all about the amount of money and how it's spent, not necessarily about whether money should be spent.
Well, she's trying to pick those sectors, just like Mnuchin is. Mnuchin and Pelosi are both trying to say we need to help airlines or hospitals. Hawley is saying, ollie in free. Everybody come in and get a check stroked from the government on a monthly basis until we're out of this. To me, that's the only sensible approach. Let's close this way, Robert. By Friday night, when Washington Week in Review convenes, do you expect that there will be ongoing conversations of which we are aware between McConnell, Pelosi, and Mnuchin?
Yes, because you're already seeing reports this morning that the small business lending program is really running out of money and running out of its lending authority, to be clear. And you're going to see an urgency to at least get that covered. And the Paycheck Protection Program is going to need to be refreshed, and that's based on my conversations with lawmakers across the lines. So I think there is going to be urgency. The question is, does Phase 4 really begin with urgency? I think for now it's just going to be getting that small business extension through.
That's a mistake. That's such a mistake. Who is leading McConnell's legislative effort, by the way? I know the leader makes the decisions, but who does the drafting in that office?
I mean, his chief of staff is highly involved, but McConnell's hands are on everything. Thurman's involved, Blunt's involved, and I know Toomey's close to him, the Pennsylvania senator as well.
Conference Chairman Blunt's coming up, so you think there's a role there. Last question, Robert. Jeff Sessions is coming up after the break. How's his standing inside the GOP caucus?
Inside the GOP caucus is probably the friendliest neighborhood for Senator Sessions. Down the street at the White House, not so friendly because they all take their cues from the boss, from the president. But he still has friends in the Senate. I'm not so sure that's going to help him too much, though, because no one wants to get out on a limb and endorse Sessions in a vocal way and get too far from the president.
And do you have a Washington Week in Review remotely ready to go on Friday night?
I always have a Washington Week ready. I've been doing it live every week, but we're going to keep trying to do it live.
Does the press briefing overlap it? Do you guys break away for the press briefing?
Well, usually the press briefing doesn't go until 8 o'clock at night. So, but you never know these days with President Trump going 2+ hours. So
it might go to 11.
It's done by 8 o'clock Eastern.
It might go to 11. Bob Costa, always a pleasure. Follow him on Twitter at Costa Reports. Follow me over to nosafespaces.com. Remember, if you're going to spend time in front of the television today, at least make your mind aware of No Safe Spaces. Dennis Prager, Adam Carolla, 99% audience rating at Rotten Tomatoes, nosafespaces.com. And if you're a small business, you just heard Robert Costa and I telling you about the fact the negotiations are underway. You've got to be a part of JobCreatorsNetwork.com. JobCreatorsNetwork.com. Go and join it so you have a voice at the biggest table on the biggest deal in the history of the American Congress. JobCreatorsNetwork.com. I'll be right back, America. Stay tuned. Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Thank you for listening to the program this morning. I think it's time to check the market, brought to you by AndrewandTodd.com. Andrew and Todd are Andrew Del Rey, Todd Avakian. I've known Andrew for 20-plus years. Very dear friend. Done my mortgages on both coasts, taken care of my family, all my friends, everybody, from California to New York, from Seattle to Florida. Andrew Del Rey and Todd Avakian are with Sierra Pacific Mortgage. They lend you money. They actually lend you the money. They're not a call center. They're not brokers. They're real, honest-to-goodness people. They're all working remotely. They were set up so long ago to take your they set up 5 years ago to work with me to make sure that you could use online mortgage financing to refinance or buy a new home, a rental, an apartment, a business property. They just finance real estate, and they do it very well. You can call them at 888-888-1172. I used to tell you what the 10-year Treasury was at 0.75%. I don't think it has any correlation with rates at all anymore. You're just going to have to call them or give them their information. It depends on where you live. It depends on demand. I know that demand has not dropped in some places, and there is no demand in places like the center of Manhattan where no one, there's still technically demand, but it certainly has dropped off the market, but that's not the case in Alexandria, Virginia, or Arlington, Virginia, where Amazon's going. It's not the case in San Francisco, where the virus is in the retreat. And so if you need a house, AndrewandTodd.com. Overseas, Japan's market went up 3% overnight. At this hour, Germany is up 1.5%. I don't know where the Dow and the NASDAQ is going today. I can tell you that Amazon went up $126 yesterday in early pre-market trading today. Who knows where it will end up today? It was up $40 a share. I think it's on a march to 3,000. It becomes a reserve currency of the United States, but I own it. So that might be the wish-giving voice to the hope. All I know is that if you need to borrow money out of your house or you want to refinance, find out whether it's a good idea. They'll never steer you wrong at AndrewandTodd.com. I go back to Anthony Fauci with Paula Reed, cut number 11, the defining moment of the press to date, cut number 11.
Are you doing this voluntarily or did the president?
No, I'm doing it. Everything I do is voluntarily. Please, don't even imply that.
Are you doing it voluntarily? Now, I have got nothing against Paula Reed. I don't know her. I didn't know who she was. I'd never seen her before. Honest to goodness, CBS, a fine news organization. She's a good journalist. She's got a Villanova law degree. She's smart. Well, Villanova. Gary Walensky, if you're listening, Villanova. Really? But she's very smart. The question ought to have been framed. Did the president ever reject any advice you urged him? Are you sure you're recalling every advice that you urged on him? Did the task force ever reject any of your advice? Instead of saying, are you being forced? The intimation there of coercion and deceit is so terrible. 1-800-520-1234. It really is just terrible. Listen to it again. Cut number 11.
Are you doing this voluntarily or did the president?
No, I'm doing it. Everything I do is voluntarily. Please, don't even imply that.
Yeah, you know what that is? It's like asking Jim Mattis, why did you serve your country? Was it for the pay? Tony Fauci could have retired 20 years ago and have been a multimillionaire a million times over. He could have been on the board of all of the he's just an icon. Are you doing this voluntarily? Now, I believe that she would take that question back. I would ask her that if she would come on the show. Do you regret that question? We all boot questions. Everybody in the business boot questions. We say dumb things we didn't mean, but if you're going to go onto the biggest stage and you're going to go for the Sunset Boulevard, I'm ready for my close-up moment, don't boot it. Don't boot it. And if you do boot it, apologize. I don't think we're going to get any of that out of any other way. The blue bubble is a hell of a drug, America. America has a hell of a kick. Andrew Cuomo's right. The worst may be over. That's great news. But boy, oh boy, yesterday. I'll be right back, America. Don't go anywhere. Jeff Sessions joins me, former senator and attorney general, next on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
This portion of the Hugh Hewitt Show has been brought to you by MyPillow. Call 800-951-5493 or go to mypillow.com and be sure to use a promo code HUGH.
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt, joined now by former United States Attorney General and Senator Jeff Sessions of Alabama. General Sessions, welcome back to the Hugh Hewitt Show. Good to have you.
Thank you, Hugh. Good to be with you.
I want to talk to you about China. Before I do, I want to ask you about a couple of things about your old department, Justice. Are you following John Durham's investigation into the Russia collusion pattern of events?
Well, I am following it, indeed. John Durham is a very, very effective prosecutor, man of experience, integrity, and respected. And I do believe the Department of Justice has an absolute responsibility to, at this point in history, to decide and find out how this investigation started, the basis for it, and whether it was properly handled.
What do you know thus far from what you are able to see and what people may tell you off the record?
Well, I'm not talking... I don't really want to talk about the details of what might be happening. It'd just be speculation. I have no insight or knowledge of what's going on, except that I do believe Attorney General Barr is resolutely committed to getting to the bottom of this, and I believe John Durham has the ability and the support he needs, and it's quite different than an Inspector General because he can subpoena people from the intelligence communities and other places, which the Inspector General cannot do, and he can call witnesses from outside to a grand jury. He has considerably more power.
Now, is there a deadline by which he must act if he were to bring indictments for anything, for any reason, and I don't have any reason to believe that he would, but if he were going to do so, is there a deadline by which he must do so because of the pendency of the election?
I'm not going to comment about all that. I know the Attorney General Barr will wrestle with those things, and they'll probably have some thoughts about that, but I don't think I should be advising the department on that.
And my last question about the investigation comes from a tweet by your old friend Chuck Grassley, who wrote not long ago, quote, "We are learning FBI flubs on Carter Page spying case are just tip of iceberg. IG audited 29 other spying applications on Americans and found problems with every one of them. Constitutional rights are at stake when FBI fails to justify use of spying tools. Reforms needed to protect civil liberties." What are your thoughts on your old friend's tweet, General Sessions?
Chuck Grassley, the Patriot. I would say this, the FISA warrants that were criticized by the Inspector General evidence a laxity in the FBI procedures that have got to be tightened up, and I'm sure the entire process is going to be reviewed by Congress, and it's appropriate that Congress do so.
Now, when I used to prepare those warrants for Attorney Generals Smith and Meese, long ago and far away, they reviewed them all personally. Did you review these warrants that have been criticized, General Sessions?
No, because I was recused on the Russia matters, but I did. The Deputy Attorney General and the Attorney General are required to, one or the other, to sign the final warrants, and the normal routine warrants were more often handled by the deputy, although I did a number of them when he was not available.
Do you know if any of those cited by the IG are ones that you signed, General Sessions?
I don't know.
All right, let's go to China, because it seems very obvious to me that at least as to numbers of cases, China is lying. By China, I mean the Communist Chinese Party, not the Chinese people. What is your reaction to both the intentional obfuscation at the beginning of this crisis and their continued deceit?
This is so important for all of America, and this whole deceit about this massive cover-up involving this pandemic is just unbelievable. Josh Rogan at the Washington Post has an article today that said our people knew there was risk at these labs even as early as 2 years ago. And so, yes, this is the pattern. Hugh, you've seen it. China gets caught, they deny. You can accuse them, they deny. You accuse them, they deny, and they attack you. And then people get tired and they go away and just leave them alone. This cannot happen this time. I have called for a special select committee investigation like Pearl Harbor or Iran-Contra, where we get to the bottom of this and expose for the world the nature of this regime. They still have not given us samples of this virus, as I understand it, and which is an anti-humanity act. I mean, why in the world aren't they helping the world respond to this pandemic with every strength they have? Also, they just recently issued an order constricting strictly the papers being written in China, the scientific studies that have been going on about how to deal with this pandemic. They've clamped down on it dramatically, as they tend to always do. So our rose-colored glasses need to come off. We need to reset our whole relationship with China. As Attorney General, I started the China Initiative that initially focused on cyber attacks on the United States, and there are many, many of them. Cases are surging now in the Department of Justice. They have over 1,000 cases pending, and there were virtually none when I took office. So this is a big deal. This is time for America to tell China that if you're going to be a responsible nation and we're going to relate to you in a reasonable way, you're going to have to meet basic standards of humanity and law and decency. And it's a big deal, and I think the president understands it.
I had a very unusual experience on Al Sharpton's show this weekend, General Sessions, where I brought up the fact that we are all suffering because of the CCP's deceit. And my colleague, Zelina Maxwell, on the show with me, posted subsequent that it was really the bats' fault, not the CCP. I do not understand why American media has trouble coming to grips with the locus of the origin of this. Do you have any doubt in your mind that this virus would not have happened but for the conduct of the People's Republic of China, at least not the pandemic nature of it?
Oh, there's no doubt about it. You know, Dr. Gottlieb, our former brilliant leader at FDA, really a smart guy, he said, had they acted in December, the whole thing may never have happened. Southampton study in England said, had China acted 3 weeks earlier, the whole 95% of the infections may not have occurred. I mean, this is there's no doubt it started from there. Two scientists, one I think a student at Northwestern University, Chinese, reported that it likely came from the labs and not the wet market. It looks like Josh Rogan's piece today in the Washington Post indicates that our State Department people toured the labs 2 years ago, January of 18, and they found terribly dangerous activities going on and wrote a cable back to the United States expressing concern over the danger of the way they were handling these viruses and how it could get out.
Do you believe, as a former Attorney General of the United States and once and perhaps future Senator, do you believe that jurisdiction for damages against the People's Republic of China lies in any U.S. jurisdiction?
Now, Hugh, you're a lawyer and you know the Department of Justice. I'm not going to answer that, but I would just say this. They should be held accountable for the damage they've occurred wherever it can be established. And there may be opportunities for them to be held accountable to this. And in the course of it, we need to end the rose-colored glasses view we've had of China, take the Reagan view of trust but verify, that if we have a deal in the future, we figure a way to make sure that we monitor it, and if they breach it, we have an ability to impose damages on them. Those are the kind of things I think should be part of our total new relationship with China. China's an important nation. It's not going away. I mean, it got a billion good people there, but this communist government has taken advantage of us enough. It needs to end. This is the opportunity to do so, to defend America's interest, protect the people of this country and the world, really. And I think it'll be a real revelation for the people of China, too. It does get back to the people some way or another over time if we can expose the lies that they've told about this pandemic.
President Trump was accused by Joe Biden of xenophobia when he imposed the travel ban from the People's Republic of China. What's your opinion of Vice President Biden's opinion of President Trump?
It's just typical of the knee-jerk protect the communist government of China, the unwillingness of the left in America to understand it. part of it is it just seems there's always some sort of sympathy and a fear that pro-democracy forces, when they criticize communism, are somehow about to go to war with them or something. But we've got to be able to tell the truth about this regime. It's typical of communist regimes. They all lie. That's how they keep power. They don't respect truth as a reality. Truth is nothing. They don't tell truth. Their goal is to advance the regime. It's always been that. That's the rules for radicals. That's how they think. And America needs to reacquaint itself with the nature of communism and how it does not value truth as an entity itself. And obviously, they don't even really concern themselves about humanity. The whole world is suffering as a result of what they did.
General Sessions, couple quick political questions. If you win the primary and the runoff and then the general, can you work with President Trump, with whom you've had your obvious arguments?
Absolutely. I mean, President Trump's been strong on China. We talked about it during the campaign. I really, would love to work with him on that. And, of course, immigration, trade, those are huge issues that a lot of the Republicans have been dragging their feet on and not being sufficiently supportive of the president. I'll be his ally. I'll be his advocate. I think we'll be able to work together nicely.
Do you expect him to endorse either you or your opponent, Coach Tuberville?
Repeat that.
Do you expect him to endorse either you or the coach?
He did say he endorsed Coach Tuberville. Yeah, he did.
And so what do you make of the lay of the land? We got a minute here, running up to the July runoff. How's it look to you?
Well, we feel good about it. I think people are beginning to realize that you need a senator who, when they hit the ground in the Senate, knows what's going on, can get things done, who has not sold out to the establishment or special interest or big money, but has always been loyal to the values of Alabamians. That's what I've done. I really feel good about where the momentum is heading in this campaign. We intend to win this race and be able to continue to advance, as I have in the past, with integrity and hard work and experience, the values that we share. And my experience really is like in China. I mean, I started as Attorney General the China Initiative because I could see the danger that was occurring here. But that was all before this pandemic occurred.
Yeah, it was. General, last question. Do you regret taking the president's invitation to become Attorney General?
No, you don't regret things like that, Hugh. I did what I thought was right. We did so many good things as Attorney General. I'm so proud of the team that we accomplished, the help we gave the president to pick judges, the defending of religious liberty, the reduction of regulations, and the reversal of a surge in crime. And we started a plan that has now been reducing crime every year in America. So there were so many great things that we were able to accomplish, and it was an honor beyond words.
Thank you, General Sessions. Always a pleasure. Don't forget, America, I'm in the ReliefFactor.com studio inside of the Beltway. Head over to ReliefFactor.com right now and get your start at $19.95. ReliefFactor.com. Come right back for Roy Blunt when we return. Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt, joined now by Senator Roy Blunt of Missouri, chairman of the House the Senate Republican Caucus. Good morning, Senator Blunt. Welcome.
Hugh, great to be with you this morning.
I had your colleague Josh Hawley on yesterday. I like his plan. I like the 80% plan. What do you make of Josh Hawley's plan?
Well, it's a level of government intervention that in February I would have never imagined we'd be talking about, but I also wouldn't have imagined we'd be on the other side of a $2.2 trillion bill, the spending bill. You know, the fact is that this economic crisis is so different than anything we've ever dealt with before. I think we're going to have to look at a number of things that are different than ideas we've had before. Josh has one of those ideas, and I think we need to see where we are in 2 or 3 weeks and what we think June and July is going to look at, and then that's when we really get into deciding what we need to do this summer. Does there need to be another direct payment discussion have? What do we need to do to extend the idea of paycheck protection? Or instead of that, do we need to look at something even more dramatic, like the idea that Senator Hawley's proposed?
Now, my point of view comes from the fact I believe that the unemployment stats are understating the problem and that the claims lag because a lot of people are just behind the curve. There's a 2 or a 4 week lag in unemployment claims from people who have never in their lives been unemployed, don't know the system, don't know how to make it work. And therefore, jumpstarting the economy is a massive challenge. Do you think you've got the data on which to make an informed decision about how much damage has been wreaked by this economic tsunami? That's what I think it is.
Well, I think that's actually, we don't have all the data we need yet, which is actually one of the problems, I think, with the speaker's view, that we know we have one of the things we did that's turning out not to have the money that it's going to need, and so she wants to sort of redo everything as part of redoing the one thing that we do have the data on. I do think we'll know more about what June and July are going to look like 3 weeks from now than we do today. Also, unfortunately, I think you're probably right on the unemployment numbers, even though we've seen here in the last 3 weeks the biggest rush to unemployment in the history of the country, with more than 17 million people that had jobs 3 weeks ago now on unemployment. And I think because of the way the state's unemployment system works, that's, as you suggested, a number that's lower than the real number, one, of even people who've applied, and two, of people who have never in their wildest imagination thought they'd be applying for unemployment and are having a hard time going through the process of finding out exactly how to do that.
And a psychological barrier to doing it. I think there's a lot of, remarkably, it's not right. People have been paying into the system their whole lives, but there's a lot of shame involved for some people in going for unemployment. And so I think we're going to find out that the patient's gotten a heart attack. We put him into a medically induced coma, but now he's had a heart attack, and you guys have the paddles. I don't know the downside of spending $500 billion a month on relief if you can cut it off. I mean, I don't want to change people's behaviors. I don't want to change the underlying economy. I just don't want to kill it, Senator.
Well, exactly. That is exactly right. And the comeback of the economy is high, obviously, on the president's mind. We're really in two fights here. One is the fight against the virus, and the other is the fight for the economy. And in the long run, the fight for the economy is probably going to be a longer-lasting struggle than the fight against the virus. I don't think we're going to see a V-shaped recovery where we're right back by mid-June to where we were in mid-February or early February. But we've got to be in both of those fights and be fully engaged. And to your point about unemployment, people who've been laid off by employers that they have worked for a week or in many cases for decades have had that people have paid into that system. They need to benefit from the system. One of the reasons that Senator Rubio and Senator Collins came up with the paycheck protection concept was we did think there was merit to keeping people on the payroll they were on rather than going on unemployment, though that was sort of an 8-week solution, and at some point we're going to have to think about whether that's the continued solution for another 8 weeks, or whether what Senator Hawley's talking about is part of the answer, or whether more easy access to unemployment and even unemployment that replaces more of the income than unemployment traditionally has. And of course, that's what Democrats insisted we do this time, is make that $600 a week addition to the unemployment that your state would otherwise be paying you. And a lot of people have chosen, of course, to take that path. And frankly, a lot of employers looking at that extra $600 a week have thought, well, this is not a bad alternative for my employees, and let's just go this direction.
Very quickly, Senator, we're almost out of time. If you offered up the Hawley plan, could Speaker Pelosi possibly say no? I mean, it's one way to just clear the decks and also to put into place a program that wouldn't have to go on. Could she possibly say no to the Hawley plan?
Well, I think the last person I'm going to project what they might be for would be the Speaker, but I think it'd be hard for her to say no.
I agree. I hope that plays into your consideration, Senator Roy Blunt. Good luck. Big choices ahead for the Senate. I'll be back tomorrow, America. The choice you don't have to make is the one you always make. To join me tomorrow on the next Hugh Hewitt Show. Thank you, Adam, Ben, and Dwayne.